Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining for today's ELA and Humanities question type deep dive. I am so excited to talk about creating questions and content on Edcite. I was a middle school ELA and social studies teacher, so I'm excited to talk with you a little bit about those content areas specifically. Okay, so let's dive right in. So today we're going to start in the question editor, and specifically we're going to talk about passages or texts. We'll talk about best practices for inserting passages. We'll talk about how to make paired passage questions if you want to have students reading multiple texts. And then we'll talk about how to number those efficiently. So let's hop into Edcite. So on Edcite, when I want to create a question, I'm going to go to my questions menu at the very top. And underneath my questions menu, I'll have three options. I'll have the question bank, my questions, and create questions. The question bank is where I can find questions already created on Edcite. And let me tell you, there are a lot of materials already created. But today we are focusing on building your own. So we'll primarily be looking at my questions and create question. My questions is where anything that you have created yourself or anything that you have saved from the library, where that will live, where those questions will live. Create question is our launching point for building a new question. So that's where we are now. We're under the questions menu in the create question page. Now there are more than 60 types of questions on Edcite. So one of the nice things about these subject-specific sessions are that we're just going to focus on what ELA and humanities teachers are going to find most helpful in terms of these question types. So there's different ways to filter the items. You can filter it by student action, subject. You can pull a full list so you can see all of the question types to just scroll through. I can also access a list of my favorite question types. I clearly have a lot of favorites, but if you just pick the 2 to 5 question types you're going to be using regularly, and star them from any of the other views. So for example, here in my student action, my default view is a multiple choice question. If I star that, it's going to add it to my favorites to easily find later. But let's go ahead, let's start with a multiple choice question because that is one of the most used question types on end of year state assessments for ELA and humanities subjects. So I've got my multiple choice question type selected here. I can see a quick picture of what the question type looks like. I can see an orange button that says create question on the right. The multiple choice item type has an option to create a batch of questions. If you'd like more information on that, please check out our knowledge base via the help button at the bottom of the page. And if I want to see a quick sample, I can click on this white sample button. But for now, we're just going to click create question. Now, for all of my question types, whether I'm making multiple choice, Venn diagrams, essays, fill in the blanks, anything, I will have the same structure to my question editor. I will always have my question name in the top left corner. So let's go ahead and write here demo multiple choice question 1. Underneath my name, I'm always going to have some tabs. So my first tab says question, and that's showing you that on this tab view, I am actually editing the question that students are going to interact with. You'll notice the next tab says tags, and that's where I could add my standards tags, my depth of knowledge tags, or any free form tags that I want to add in there. I've also got this option for show more if I want to open up additional tabs for adding a rubric, adding a solution or exemplar response, adding sources to my question. But for right now, I'm going to collapse those, so I'm just seeing question and tags. Underneath the question and tags, I've got my stimulus boxes. So you'll see here that I've got what's called a pre-stimulus box, and that's usually in the state test where it says, today we will read 2 passages and answer, the questions. I've got a good one that I've built before that I was going to copy and paste for this. Yeah, okay. Today you will analyze a passage from, so I can, right now, just to make this simple, paste this in here. Today you will analyze a passage from the novel and a passage from another novel. As you read these, you'll gather information. So you can write in there whatever you would like. And then, if I want to make any adjustments, I can. In here, underneath that pre-stimulus box, this is where I can add my passages. Now, the difference between the pre-stimulus box and the stimulus box is that this pre-stimulus box will appear regardless of which tab of the stimuli the student is on. So if I've got a passage 1, and I do this as a paired passage, so I have a passage 2, the students will tab back and forth between these sources, but this pre-stimulus box stays there regardless. So that's just to understand the difference between these two areas. If I want to get rid of one of these readings, I can use the red X to delete it, and now I just have my passage 1. And just to I'm going to make this simpler. Today you will analyze a passage and answer questions. Okay, so as I mentioned, this very first part of the session is going to focus on best practices for inserting a reading. So let's just talk about if I found a reading or I have a particular text that I want to do with students. In this example, I want to do Alice in Wonderland, and I have found the text easily online. And so let's say that I want to add these paragraphs into my passage area here. Well, I can just copy them from this tab. So I copy or use your, keyboard shortcuts for that. I paste. You'll notice it pastes in here with sometimes that formatting from whatever website you're using. So that's not necessarily what I want. Sometimes if you paste from a website, it'll paste in perfectly plain, but I didn't have that here. So let's delete all, and instead I'm going to paste and match style to see what that looks like. It looks like that got rid of my paragraph breaks. So I don't like that option either. So if you find that your copy and paste is bringing in too much formatting and your paste without style is eliminating any of your breaks, instead of just doing a copy paste into the box, I would recommend clicking on this blue pencil to open up the text editor. And this is going to bring in more functionality. So if I click paste as text, oops, let's see, edit, paste, browser doesn't support, oh, okay, hold on. Let's try this again. Okay, copy and edit, paste as text. Oh, weird. Please use the shortcuts instead. Okay, so we'll use the shortcuts instead. And in this format, having it copy and pasted into my pop-up box, this rich text editor, actually brings in that text in a much nicer format. So just a couple tricks that you'll notice if just pasting into the box is bringing in too much of that formatting from whatever website you're copying from, I like to just click the blue pencil and then paste it in this way. If it has any hyperlinks or things in there, again, coming from whatever site you're pasting from, you can always highlight it, go to the format option and click clear formatting to make sure that there's no additional, options added in there. And so then the other thing I can do is I can add in my title. So I might say Alice in Wonderland. I could put in chapter 1, Down the Rabbit Hole by Lewis Carroll. Perfect. And if, let's say, I want to bold, I could highlight and click the B. I could make this italic. So I can kind of set this up, do any of the typical font formatting that I would usually have. Now, one thing that I said we wanted to talk about in terms of passage building, I like to add those nice clean paragraph numbers in my readings. And so this little green button here next to the pencil is an automatic paragraph number button. And so what I want to do is put my cursor where I want the numbers to start, and then either drag down to the bottom or use keyboard shortcuts to select all to the bottom of the page. And then when I click on this green button, it automatically adds in my 1, 2, 3, etc. So I just like the look and feel of that. So we've gone ahead and added those. If I want to add another passage, again, I can click on this plus sign and I can paste in my next reading. So I'm just going to grab a different portion of Alice in Wonderland, even though that is not likely what you would do. So I copy. And then just like we remember from last time, pasting in this way brought in that formatting. So instead, I'm going to just click on the pencil and paste in here. Okay, so if I wanted to, I could again add in those paragraph numbers. I could add in my title. But for right now, I'm just going to say passage 2 and add in my numbers. So as you are building your questions, at any point, if you want to see what this looks like so far, you can toggle from edit mode in the top right corner over to preview. And so here I can see that pre-stimulus box where it has today you will analyze a passage and answer questions. And then my 2 tabs here where students can toggle between whatever tabs I have. In terms of additional options for this stimulus area, a lot of times we don't just want to use passages, but we want our students to be familiar with multiple media sources. So whether that's video, audio, images, so PDFs or embedding from other sites. I'm going to actually add a few more passage tabs or stimulus tabs in here to show some of these other embed options. So if I, let's say, wanted students to analyze a reading, maybe it's an informational text versus a video that walks through the same topic, I can use that advanced pencil. This is exactly where we were doing our copy and paste and all of our font formatting. I can actually embed a video from my computer or from the Edcite library. So if, let's say, we were doing something on states of matter, I could look to see if there was anything in the bank already on states of matter. Maybe this is a science informational text versus a video. So I might say like, oh yeah, I really like this. This looks like a Khan Academy one. I could play it to preview the materials, I'm going to go ahead and just click select so you can see that it just drops in that video there. I'm also able to add a video that's not already on Edcite. So if I toggle from video library over to add video, you'll see I can search directly on here for Khan Academy States of Matter, and I can find a video that I like. I can preview it. I can browse through, see what videos I want, and when I'm ready, I can click add video. I can also upload a video. So if you have made your own video or if you have downloaded a video from a different source, feel free to upload that directly to Edcite, and that's going to appear in the assignment as expected. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and just click add video for now and click OK. And I'm going to name this our video option, video number 1. If I want to add another passage, now this to me as a social studies teacher is starting to feel more like what I would have given students as like a document-based question, like a DBQ is what we called these packets that we used to give, where they'd have multiple sources of information to deep dive into a particular topic or era. So maybe I've got texts, I've got videos, maybe I want to embed a picture of a map, or I want students analyzing some kind of primary source. Just like we added the video. So the video is that film strip there. For adding a picture, I would do the same process, but from the picture frame. So if I click on the picture frame, it's the same idea that I can search the image library. So maybe I want a map, and I could find a map of the world. If I wanted to add my own image, I could search, but usually if I'm adding my own images, I'm just pulling it from my computer. So I would just click select files, certify that it's not a copyright infringement, and then insert it into my question. For right now, I'm going to go with map. We'll just put in the map of the world here. If I want to resize something, I can click and drag. Okay, so now I've got my map number 1. And then the last one I want to go over is an audio file. So if I wanted to have, let's say, an interview. So this is actually, on a previous assignment that I built. We made these benchmark assessments a number of years ago, and their research task was a combination of reading a letter, so a primary source, as well as listening to an interview. So then the students also listen to an audio clip. So what I can do is I can embed an audio clip. Again, I use that blue pencil. Instead of the picture frame or the film strip, I go to the sound symbol. I've got my audio library, so I could look for the interview that I've already, maybe I didn't name it interview. Let's see what's in here. Oh, I probably put this in here as unnamed. So a good best practice is when you are uploading things to name them. But whatever file I do end up adding, so I would probably just, instead of the audio library, go back into add audio, and I would click upload audio to select the download from my computer and upload it into Edcite. I can also record audio live. So if I am going to give some kind of firsthand account, or I'm going to record myself telling a story or doing a direct recording myself, I can go ahead, go to this record audio, click start, and then just add that recording. I mean, that might even be like an easier way if you have a really old recording that you're trying to get in to the system that isn't easily in a digital format. You could also look at just recording it and then certifying it's not a big copyright problem, and then adding that recording that you have in your computer. Okay, so for right now, I'm just going to pull something from here. I'm going to grab this one. You'll notice that sometimes when it goes in here, it looks grayed out, but when students see it, or unless I clicked on the wrong one, but when students see it, they can just click the play button. So that's a quick overview of just how I can get passages in. And for general humanities teachers, if I'm doing speaking and listening, or I'm having students analyze different mediums of information, I can embed audio, video, uh, images. Oh, and I do want to just quickly show off how to embed a PDF or document or PowerPoint or video from Google Drive or a similar Google Drive, OneDrive. Again, I'm going to click on my pencils here. And instead of, adding a picture, audio, or video, I can actually go to this, not the paperclip, it's like a document with a world in front of it, and it'll ask me for an embed link. And so here I have a science journal for kids PDF that I want to just put that into the system. You'll want to, if you're in Google Drive or OneDrive, make sure you have it opened as its own tab, so not just that preview in your Google Drive. You want to make sure that you can get the option in your dots to embed the item. And from there, I can highlight my source URL, copy that, go back into my question, paste that URL, and insert that. And now you'll see that I've got my question in here. If you want to make this larger, you can highlight and then drag the corners to make this bigger. And then one thing I'm noticing is that sometimes if you have a PDF or a really large image, yes, students can scroll, but sometimes that gets difficult. So at the bottom of your passage, there's actually a draggable part where you can drag this to be wider. It makes your questions skinnier, but at least you've got more space for students to do the reading. Okay, so that is the passage deep dive. Now we're going to talk about, once I've got those built, how do I efficiently make my questions? So on Edcite, I can, anywhere where I have gray italic letters, click and start typing. So I might say, what are the states of matter? Maybe this was an informational text. And so I can click and I can write gas, liquid, solid, snow. If I want to add more choices, fire, air, so I throw in my distractors as well. To set my answer, I just click on the letter, but you'll notice in this one, this needs to be multi-select. And so, clicking, I need to be able to click all three of these. So across all of your question types, it's good practice to click into this settings gear, this little wheel here. So if I click on that wheel, I'm going to see additional options for this particular item type. So I want this to be multi-select. I could choose to add a minimum required answers. That's really helpful if you have, let's say, I was telling them, please identify 2 states of matter. And even though there are 3 correct answers here, I'm only going to require them to provide 2 of them. That can also be really helpful if you have, if you want to give a student a question that's a bit more open-ended. I'm even thinking about a character question where you're saying, okay, I'm going to make this multi-select. I'm actually going to count all of these characters as the correct answer, and I only want students to select one. And in that case, you could say, what is your who's your favorite character, and they're going to get credit for just making sure that they select one. So the combination of multi-select and minimum required answers just gives you more flexibility around whether something should be counted as correct or incorrect, how many answers they're expected to give. Or if I had this set at 3, they'd have to give all 3 of those to get full credit. And that's the setting by default. So if I don't have minimum required answers selected, they're expected to give all of the correct answers. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to say, what are 2 states of matter? And we'll say that they just have to select 2 of those. In ELA, we often have these dependent questions where part A asks about a particular skill, and then there's a part B directly under it asking for students to support their answer in part A with a piece of evidence. So if I wanted to add a part B, I'm going to click this add question part at the bottom, and this is where I can click multiple choice again. I can click add selected, and this is the most common view for these end of year state tests. I've got part A with a question, part B, please select which statement best supports your answer. So then I can, have statement 1, statement 2. If I, let's say, just had 2 options, I could go ahead and set it up this way. What I like about Edcite is that we get really into the nuance of grading. So we talked about how you can do multi-select and minimum required answers, and that's like a nice understanding of auto grading, but with some flexibility. I really like this A/B grading. And so if I click on that, it means that if my students don't get A correct, then they cannot get credit for B. And that's great if I do have part A set up as what is the theme of the story, and part B is what part of the text supports that answer. Well, if they didn't get the theme correct, they shouldn't be able to get credit for just like a good guess at theme, because I can't support a wrong answer with correct evidence. So that A/B scoring will appear when you add a part B in this way. I'm going to actually move that over though, so we can see all of this a bit better. Okay, so that's a part A, part B question. If I want to make an assignment using all of these different, pieces of media, and I don't want to have to copy and paste these in over and over again, what I like to do is I like to save this question, click continue editing, and then this button next to the trash can says clone. So I can clone that question to make this question number 2. And then in that case, I can change out these questions. So let's say I want to get rid of part B. I can use the trash can there. And maybe I want to change this to say, like, what was the message of the story? So I could, change out the text of this. If I wanted to use a different question type, the good like ELA hack here is to add that question part. So I click add question part. It's got a short list of ELA question types that are most commonly used. So for example, maybe a select text question. So I've got select text from stimulus here, which is where I would add in selectable options within the text itself. So I can click add selected. I can get rid of my part A, and now I just have this new question. I'm going to get rid of that PDF option, this audio option, to simplify this a little bit. Drag this back over. Okay. I know we are just at the 30-minute mark. Thanks for joining. If you have to hop off, we are recording this. I'm going to finish up a few other points before wrapping up this session, but feel free to check back for the video if you need to hop off at this point. Okay, so for this question, the select text from stimulus, if I'm in a passage, I can add selectable text parts within this passage. So it'll have instructions here within this question type. And for any question type that I'm adding, you'll notice a little green question mark next to it where I can access step-by-step instructions and sample items for that question type. Right now, I'm just going to use these directions here. So it says add your text, which we already did. Then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to highlight what I want to be a selectable portion. So it says, use your mouse to highlight the desired selections. Let's say I want them to choose either that part or maybe this part. Whoops, I didn't select all of that correctly. If you make a mistake in your selection, you can click on the blue and click reset. And then let's say I want to select all of that. So when I select, I can then click on that blue selection to either change it from blue to yellow, which would indicate it's a correct answer. If I want to get rid of it, I can click reset, which removes that highlight. If I click reset all, it's going to get rid of all of my highlights and I start over. I'm going to say that this is the correct answer. And so students won't see that in yellow. Instead, what they see, if I toggle over to my preview, is they see everything in blue. And, instead of writing new question, I'd say like, please select the evidence that shows X, Y, and Z. And students will click on that part of the text and it's going to automatically grade it. So that's a nice question type to use. That's our select text from stimulus. I'm actually going to show you now the select text from excerpt, which is similar, but it's actually a question type I prefer. This question type from the stimulus is going to look more like the MCAS or the PARC or some of those Pearson style test interfaces, whereas the select text from excerpt is more like your SBAC, your Cambium, a lot of the other state assessment providers. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click save. So we've got this question 2 done. I'm going to do my trick of cloning the question so I don't have to work on my passages at all again. I'm going to add a question part. My select text from excerpt isn't in this small list, so I'm going to go to all list. And I'm in the select answer, I can see select text from excerpt, number 007, add question. I'm going to delete this option. You'll notice it gets rid of those blue highlights. And then if I wanted to highlight, let's say just this paragraph, and I want them to choose, oh, it seems to be highlighting. Okay, so I will highlight for the team that this should not be highlighting blue. Okay, so I'll make a note of that. But let's say that I am highlighting this and I'm copying and pasting it to be part of my excerpt for selection. That goes in here, and I might say select the words that show Alice is tired, or something. I'm asking them to select something. In my settings gear here, I mentioned that I encourage you to click on that. If I click on that, I can choose whether I want students selecting text by the word, by the paragraph, at a sentence level, or a custom selection. Custom selection is helpful if you have a lot of quotation marks that you want treated as one selectable area. All that Edcite looks for when doing some of these automated breaks for a sentence, it's just looking for an end mark. So I might actually want to have a quote where they're selecting the entire piece of it. And I don't want it to end at the question mark in the middle. So custom selection is helpful there. But just to show you what this looks like, if I went to sentence, I think I only actually have one sentence in here. So maybe I'll show custom select. So if I do custom select, it's similar to our previous question type where I set my choices. Okay, so I highlight to say what should be selectable. I've got that point earlier about minimum required answers. So maybe there's a few options people can choose, and I'm just going to require them to select one. I can then say I'm going to set the answers. Maybe both of these are considered correct. If I click done, what this looks like for students, again, I will follow up on this blue highlight, but students can select the part of the paragraph, and you'll notice it's only going to let them click where I have added the selectable parts. So let's say they click this, check answer. It's going to give them automated points because even though there were two correct answers in there, I said there's only one required selection. So that's your select text from excerpt. I'm going to save, continue editing, and then clone this one more time to finalize this session with an essay. So if I add a question part, I'm going to go into my, let's see, written response. I'm going to go with an essay response. Quick note on the difference between free response and essay response. It's really just the size of the box and some of the formatting tools that students get. If you want a larger box so students are encouraged to write more, just go with the essay response. I'm going to click add question. I'm going to delete this part A. And I'm going to say what, or I'm just going to say, please write your essay. Okay. And so in here, this is probably one of the most simple question types you can make. I can still click in my settings gear to see what additional options are in here. I can set a character limit. I can show a character count. Sometimes that's on some of the state assessments, so you might want to build that in to mirror that experience, either a word count or a character count. I can also do a simplified toolbar so they don't have all of the formatting options, but I'm going to go ahead and just keep this pretty simple. And I'm going to use this question type to highlight how I add my tags. So I've got a lot of tags, a lot of states turned on here in my demo, but I'm based in California, so I'm going to go ahead and just add in a couple California standards. So let's say that I wanted to add a particular vocab standard. As you probably saw, I can just type here in the box and it's going to automatically filter my tags. And I can set tags at the question or part level. So if we think back to that part A, part B question I had made, I would probably want to tag part A to whatever skill, so maybe theme, and then part B is evidence. So you can specify tags not to apply to every part of the question, but rather the individual part. And that's great for your reports on the back end because your standards analysis doesn't, blur the performance between those skills. I can also tag to depth of knowledge, or if I want to add any free-form tags like chapter 1 or anything else that I might want to search for, or I might add onto this like untaught. So sometimes I like to pull in my reports at the end whether or not I've explicitly taught this skill yet in quarter 1. And that way I can look at, okay, well, let me just look at the data for the skills that I taught and then separately look at the skills that we haven't gotten to yet to see where we are as a baseline. So free-form tags are nice to have too. In addition to tagging, I can choose to add a rubric. So this third tab here, rubric, allows me to either create a new rubric where I can, build in my criteria, add in my points. I can just click to type. If I want to find an already existing rubric, I can toggle to rubric library to find something that's already in the Edcite system, like an argumentative writing 4-point rubric. Or if I want to find a rubric that I have used before, I can go to my rubrics, or I can go to rubrics that are shared across my Edcite schools account. So if we have a rubric we're using for common assessments as an ELA team, I can see those here. Okay, so I've just instead added that argumentative rubric. I'm going to save this. And so now I've got 4 questions that I've built, and all of those questions live in my questions. So if I want to then package those as an assignment, I'll checkbox those. I can click assign, and it's going to scoop them into my assignment editor. So I'm going to call this my demo question or demo assignment ELA. If I want to add additional questions that I've created, I can click add existing questions, and that'll bring up the my questions page to checkbox additional options or pull from the banks. When I'm ready to send to students, I can make this active. And before we kind of close out this session, I do want to highlight, because I think it's great for ELA, that if you are a team that's using the premium school and district version, so you have text to speech built in, you have the option to disable text to speech on the passage area. So sometimes you will have students that have text to speech only on the directions, the questions, and so you can have it just available on that, and then you can disable text to speech for the actual passage. So that's just a nice point for ELA and humanities teachers specifically. Okay, well, thank you so much for hanging out a little bit extra. A few question types I definitely recommend checking out. And again, when you go into that create question page, you can see a sample of that question type. And when you go to create it, there's always that green question mark, which is going to show you step-by-step instructions on how to do it. So we went through the multiple choice, the select text, and the essay. I'd also recommend checking out the order list. That's slightly different than our rearranged text setup, but I think it looks a little nicer. It allows for images to also go in there, which can be great for chronological order for some of those early elementary stories. You can do drag and drop with text or images, fill in the blanks, which can be really great for language assessments. So if I'm thinking about when I took high school Spanish and we had a lot of fill in the blank for conjugating verbs, that can be really wonderful. Fill in the blanks can be a drag and drop, a type in text, or a drop down wherever you put your blanks. The essay we talked about, there's a great Venn diagram question, because what ELA teacher does not love a classic Venn diagram question? And then record audio is part of the Edcite Schools platform, but really great for assessing those speaking and listening standards, or just getting students talking about the text that they're reading. Okay, well, thank you so very much. And I hope you guys are having a great back to school. And please reach out to our team with any additional questions. All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.